What is up, guys? Blocc FBL here, and today we are taking a look at my current team. Now, as you can see, it's a 5-3-2 at the moment. I have some players that are pretty much locked in with Ederson, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Salah, Zinchenko, Sterling, Wilson, and Fraser. So that's pretty much the whole team, I'd say. I wouldn't actually, let me take Ederson out of that category because I could decide to go down to a 4.5. Let me just go over each of my players and let's talk about why I'm having them right now, why I think this team will be a good team. And maybe if this team will be good enough to, put me in a position to do as well as I did last year. Okay, the main reason I have Ederson is just because Man City in the past, they started really well under Pep at the beginning of the seasons, keeping a lot of clean sheets in a row, stuff like that. I think it's a good way to get into the Man City defense. He only cost $6 million and he's nailed on. It's pretty simple. He only scored like less than 10 points less than Laporte over all of last season. So for the 0.5 less, I think it's definitely worth it. Moving on to Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, I think it's pretty important if you're going to have Liverpool defenders to take them over Van Dijk. I think that extra 0.5 up is pretty worth it. I think a lot of people overrate Van Dijk's actual goal threat. If we take a look here on understat.com of expected goals per 90 minutes, expected assists per 90 minutes, a lot of people talk about Van Dijk's goal threat when they don't talk about somebody like Alexander-Arnold's goal threat. Well, over the expected goals per 90 minutes last season, Van Dijk had 0.09 and Trent Alexander-Arnold had 0.05. So it's not too much of a difference. And when you consider the expected assists per 90 minutes, which obviously TAA kills him, per 90 minutes, expected assists, Trent Alexander-Arnold has 0.26 and Van Dijk 0.03. And Robertson has 0.22 assists and 0.02 goals. So, yes, Van Dijk does beat them slightly in expected goals, and he is cheaper. But I think with the extra assist bonus, I think the 0.5 is worth it. They just get forward so much, especially Trent. Trent's on all kinds of free kicks and stuff. So Trent's nailed on even more than Robertson, but Robertson's pretty much nailed on as well. If I was to get rid of Robertson, I probably wouldn't get Van Dijk. I'd probably switch to somebody like Mane, and I don't know how I'd even do that. It doesn't really fit into the style of my team right now. So that's why them two are in right now. Obviously, also, even though Liverpool haven't done good in preseason, they played Norwich at home the first week, so hopefully that can give them some confidence. In case you don't know, promoted teams in their first games almost never win, and it's pretty bad most of the time. Maybe they'll get a draw, but considering that's at Anfield as well, and then they have some decent matchups after that too, I think that the preseason worries are, they're valid, but I think the fixtures that they have at the beginning of the season will sort of balance that out. So let's move on to Dean. Now, Dean, I like him because of the way he gets forward and gets assists. I don't really trust Everton's defense at the moment. That's why I didn't really list him in the players that are pretty much nailed on for my team. If we look at Dean's expected assists over the course of last season, per 90 minutes, it was 0.23, which is higher than Robertson. And he is on set pieces like corners and free kicks, similar to Alexander-Arnold. And he's $6 million. I mean, it's really more of a value pick if I decide to stick with him because, okay, like let's say I go Dean down to a 4 million defender, and then I can move up Dendoncker or Hayden, my 4.5 midfielders, up to like Jose Perez or David Brooks or somebody, which is very tempting. And that's something I've been thinking about now. What is this battle between Dean or Jose Perez? If Jose Perez had better fixtures at the beginning, I would go with him. But Dean just got such good fixtures for a long stretch. Let's see. He doesn't have a fixture difficult ranking of 4. Like, he doesn't play a top team until game week 7. So hopefully those, my doubts about Everton's defense now that they lost Idrissa Gueye, their main defensive mid, maybe, Dean's easy fixtures can sort of make up for that, and hopefully he can pick up some assists. But yeah, right now he's in the team. I think he's pretty good value, only at $6 million. If he was 6.5, it would make it really tough. I'd probably go with the Jose Perez then. Like, that's how close it is for me at the moment. Let's move on to Zinchenko. Zinchenko is a pretty obvious pick for me. He's pretty nailed on now that Mendy's out. I think, he ended last season pretty well. He started pretty consistently. He's been under Pep for a good couple of years now. So I think Pep trusts him a little bit more than Angelino, his competitor at left back with Mendy out. Obviously, as I mentioned with Ederson, Man City typically start off defending pretty well and playing well in general. So Zinchenko nailed into my team. I think it's pretty important to try to start with 3 Man City players if you can, because they're, if you get players like Ederson, Zinchenko, Laporte, Sterling, Aguero, they're pretty much going to do good, and you can trust them at the beginning of the season. That's pretty important. But yeah, Ederson and Zinchenko, most likely, I'm most likely going to have both of them. If I don't have Ederson, I'd probably have Laporte and Zinchenko or something like that. I do want to double up with the Man City defense to start off with. I wish their fixtures were a little better, but after game week 2, they get much better. Now, Cathcart is an interesting pick. My question right now is he going to start for sure? Because I know they signed Craig Dawson. I know that Cathcart he's been at Watford for a while, and he plays a lot of minutes for them. So I do think he'll play, but he is a slight doubt. He is a 4.5 defender. I mainly have him because of the matchups. Brighton at home first week, very likely clean sheet. Brighton are not good on the road. And then game week 3, they play West Ham at home, and then game week 4, they play Newcastle away. So 3 potential clean sheets there. Hopefully they'll get 2 out of those. Unfortunately, he plays Everton on the road game week 2, and I don't know who I'm going to play that game week yet. If you look at my team, I have Dendoncker that could come in game week 2, but he plays, who does he play game week 2? He plays Manchester United game week 2. I could throw Hayden in there. I think Hayden has a good matchup. Hayden has Norwich away, but do I really want to play Isaac Hayden? I mean, does he really get forward that much? Not really. Maybe Mason Greenwood will, start the first game and look good, and maybe he'll be going into the second game starting, which I'd play him then just because, Big Six team and obviously chance to score some goals and get assists. So, but yeah, right now Cathcart's in my team. Hopefully he can get some points game week 1. I don't know. Let me know what you think about the whole Cathcart situation. Maybe I should go with somebody that I can trust a little more for game week 2, so I don't have to play a 4.5 midfielder. Although we will get to Dendoncker in the future, and I will explain why maybe he's worth starting. Now Salah, I probably shouldn't have to say too much about Salah. You probably already know, but his expected goals and his expected assists are always good. Norwich at home is a dream matchup. Norwich have not looked good in preseason either, and they're a newly promoted team. As long as he's set to start and fit and everything, he's probably going to be my captain. If he's not, it'll either be Wilson or a Liverpool defender. Probably Wilson, though. Sterling, pretty much the same thing as Salah. I had Sterling pretty much a lot last season. Pretty much all season, that's what I was going to say, but I'm not sure if that's true. But I did have Sterling a lot last season. He's really good. Over the course of last season, Sterling had 0.51 goals, expected goals per 90 minutes, and 0.35 expected assists per 90 minutes. Now, the thing that sets Sterling apart from somebody like Aguero, because I have had that debate, who should I go for? Last season, Aguero did start off very well, but he was also fresh. He didn't have to play anything over the summer. He was coming in rested, and that's the situation that Sterling is in now. He's looked good in preseason, and he's coming in fresh, and I think, although Aguero typically does better when KDB plays with him, I think that's the fact that Sterling's fresh and rested, I think that'll make the difference. So I'm going with Sterling over Aguero. Ryan Fraser, definitely nailed on for me. More nailed on than Wilson, I think. His expected assists are always crazy. He creates so many chances. Let's see, Ryan Fraser, over the course of last season, he had 0.46 expected assists per 90 minutes. And that's not amazing. Well, that's good, obviously. That's an assist every 2 games. But if we look at his last 10 games, Ryan Fraser had 0.72 expected assists per 90 minutes. Now, just because they ended a season like that doesn't mean they'll start a season like that. But they have really good fixtures, which is probably the main reason I'm doubling up on them. Sheffield at home, Aston Villa away, plus the fact that they've looked good in preseason too. Wilson and Fraser both scored a goal or 2. I know Fraser scored 1, Wilson scored 2. I am starting to like Bournemouth a lot. I had both of Fraser and Wilson at the end of last season. Along with a lot of these players, I had Sterling a lot last season, Salah, Robertson. I start off with Ederson. Let's move on to strikers, Deulofeu. Now, it's a battle between him and Deeney, really, because they're both good. If we look at the expected assists and goals for last season over 90 minutes, per 90 minutes, Troy Deeney, over the last 10 games, he had 0.41 expected goals per 90 minutes, up from 0.36 throughout the whole season. His expected assists per 90 minutes are 0.23. So that's really, he ended the season better than Deulofeu did. Deulofeu's expected goals per 90 minutes were 0.1 lower, and his assists were also 0.1 lower. But right now I have Deulofeu just because his habit of scoring at small teams. Last season he only scored against teams like Huddersfield and who else was it? Cardiff or somebody, the 2 worst teams in the league pretty much. And hopefully Brighton can be one of those teams, as well as some of these other teams he's playing in the first 4 game weeks. As I mentioned when I was going over Cathcart's fixtures, they probably Brighton at home, West Ham, and then Newcastle with Everton in there. But so maybe Newcastle, maybe West Ham. I don't know. I really haven't decided between DeLaFeu and Dini. Maybe I should switch to Dini. He's also a little more nailed on. I would think they would start DeLaFeu, but also Dini's on penalties, so I don't know. It's really a tough decision. I do like DeLaFeu. He's one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player in the EPL. He's really explosive, which is why I have him. Hopefully I can get 2 or 3 goals out of him, in one game like he did last season. But that could be Dini, but it will likely be a Watford striker. Or I could change it to someone like Yosi Perez. I mean, that's probably the most up for grabs spot at the moment. It's really tough. There's so many 6.5 options. There's Jota. Oh, man. But, yeah, let's move on to Wilson. He's pretty nailed on. I mean, he ended the season really well. He always starts the season really well. He did really well in general last season. He's the kind of person that I would not be surprised if he scores 2 goals in the first game, especially against newly promoted teams. He's definitely in my team. There's no question about it. He is similar to Fraser. His expected goals is 0.68 per 90 minutes over the last 10 games. Very good. Along with 0.18 assists per 90 minutes. So that's cool. Let's move on to the bench. Dendoncker. If we look at Dendoncker, I made a post on Twitter about this. His expected goals per 90 minutes were so high. Over the last 10 games, his expected goals per 90 minutes is 0.36. That's more than people like DeLaFeu and Fraser. It's ridiculous. He's a 4.5 mid. But yeah, so maybe if he continues to play in that fashion, he could become a starter into my team, which means I could spin more elsewhere. That's very interesting. Greenwood, he could potentially start. Could be interesting. Hayden, I'm pretty sure he's going to start too, so they're just on the bench for fodder. But yeah, that's a quick rundown of how my team is looking at the moment. Let me know what you think. This is Blocc FPL. I'll see you next time.